Hi, my name is Amos Hayes. I'm with the Geomatics and Cartographic Research Center at Carleton University. I'm going to be speaking about community knowledge infrastructure and how to grow it with communities. So, the Inuit Tapiri Kanatami, as a National Inuit Strategy on Research, talks about a number of priority areas, and priority area 4 has something in here in one of their action items. It talks about in 4.2, investing in culturally relevant community-based technology to facilitate access to and management of data and information. I call this one out specifically because it's something that all researchers and all projects could play a part in making happen. We all have processes and methodology and systems that we're using when we're doing research with communities, and thinking about how that could be made to live on for the community afterwards, I think is very important as well. The First Nations Information Governance Center also has a data governance strategy that makes it very clear that to be successful over the long term, really talking about community-driven and nation-based networks of semi-autonomous regional centers, and they're talking about coordinating around standardization and interoperability. These are fairly new statements. In our work, we've been doing work with communities for, I guess, over a decade and a half now, and some of the more practical reasons to look at community-owned, community-operated knowledge infrastructure is that communities have a wide assortment of information that they work with. And lots of the people that are in a community working on these initiatives, they're wearing more than one hat, working with a number of different projects, looking at different things and trying to solve problems that the community may be facing and make some decisions on how to move forward. The research projects that have been coming into communities or working with communities, they only last so long. They might come with their own systems. The systems may have been sort of designed and built outside of the community, and they're kind of brought in and used for a period of time, and then maybe it's really difficult to sustain and support them once the projects are over. And so anything that's been sort of done with that system, whether it's process or skills or it's data, may be lost or may not be as useful anymore once that infrastructure stops being functional. And so, it'd be great to have all of these projects have this infrastructure live on, but of course, every community organization that's doing this kind of work, or that's part of these projects, they can't afford to necessarily sustainably build and operate these infrastructures, or at least not when every piece of work requires its own infrastructure. And so some of the things that we might be looking at, and that we've been focused on for some time, as I said, is looking at ways of building systems that can support these multiple varied uses. And of course, that means supporting the multiple varied types of information that a community might care about, or that researchers might care about, or that they both care about. And so this could be all kinds of information, and it includes all kinds of hard numbery type information, as well as everything from video recordings to artwork and objects, and the ways of capturing more traditional knowledge and digitizing those. And so having some kind of common base of infrastructure that can support all of that also means that you can start to share your training and your technicians and your actual infrastructure between the community organizations and projects that are doing things. And the community can wind up being a bit of a data hub for the various projects that are coming. If the community has their own infrastructure, then the projects can be encouraged to make use of their infrastructure, as opposed to building new infrastructure specific to a project that's standalone and separate. And that would mean that these efforts and the initiatives and the investments that are being made can contribute towards something that does continue to stay and live on in the community, because it's supported by multiple initiatives. One place that we've been doing that, and an example of this type of work, is with our Nunaliit software framework, where Nunaliit is a software framework for building online atlases, and an atlas could be holding all kinds of information, but it's turned into a bit more than that. It's become a bit of a community knowledge infrastructure framework for collecting and organizing, presenting and preserving information, and allowing people to collaborate on this, both within communities, between organizations, and between research projects. So the multiple representations of information are very important. Making multiple uses from the same system, like really important. And this distributed architecture, being able to have multiple nodes in a network, hosting and sharing information is important as well. This framework has been co-developed with communities for, as I said, about a decade and a half, and it's open source, so contributions to the framework are available for everyone and can outlive any one partner, including us, who may have started the project a while back, but we're not the only ones developing and using it now. So the network has grown, and folks who are using Nunaliit within their communities or using it to host on behalf of communities and communities that are hosting their own infrastructure has grown quite a bit, as you can see. And if you want to have a look at some of those, at least some of the public ones that are ready to be seen, you can have a look at our Atlas's page on our Atlas. I'll give you a quick rundown on a couple. So the community of Arctic Bay. Youth worked to collect place names from elders over a number of years. This atlas was created really to provide talking place names, so you can hear the pronunciation of these place names. You can see elders talking about the places in video clips. You can look at photographs and artwork related to those places. And the community took on that atlas and continued to add more modules to it, including a module focused on the Nunavut Quest dog sled races, local artisans, and the community was using it in training young adults on participating in creating content in the Atlas and managing community-based content. So it was very well received. And the elders who were part of the original project were able to come back and see the information they provided and maybe offer up some new suggestions or some corrections to what had been done with the community responsible for maintaining the system. Arctic Bay's place names are also able to be found in the inuitplaces.org atlas. This is a joint project with the Kitikmeot Heritage Society and the Geomatics and Cartographic Research Center, with a number of contributing partners like Arctic Bay, Inuit Heritage Trust, and other research projects and organizations to create a bit of a border-free Inuit places map. And there have been some conversations about extending beyond Inuit Nunaliit. This is one example of information that can be locally managed but shown in a broader context as necessary. The Kitikmeot Heritage Society has been working with the GCRC for almost as long as the Arctic Bay Atlas group, and the Kitikmeot Heritage Society has a heritage center in Cambridge Bay where they've got a touchscreen and a local server containing all of the content, all of the videos, all of the digitized ethnographic objects in a system there. So it's local, it's within the heritage center, and it's also able to replicate itself to servers of the GCRC for other people to view online where the internet connection can support that. The KHS is also focused on digital return of cultural objects from museums, looking at language in particular, contributing to the Inuit Lexicon Atlas, the information for Inuit. And they're working on a knowledge bank project, which will have a number of knowledge banks that are all interconnected and ultimately able to retain and make available these digital records to be used in various atlases and various presentations in educational contexts. Community of Clyde River also has been building an atlas for a number of years. So there's an atlas committee in the community, and they work to decide what goes in addition to having place names and some of the other types of information you've already seen from the other atlases. They're also focused on some things like documenting the old settlement before the community was moved across the bay. They have a number of their own weather stations in Clyde River, which they are looking at visualizing the information for that. We're actively working on a system for hunters to make some decisions before they go out, so an active hunter decision-making system, and information on various wildlife species and where they are around the community, and information related to hunting and harvesting is something that's going into the atlas as well. And in this case, you see Robert and Mike from Clyde River working on some of that information on a touchscreen table at the GCRC with Peter and JP. So another example of this is maybe a more initially Southern-driven research project that's managed to really adapt to supporting community needs is the Towards a Sustainable Fishery for Nunavut project, which is looking at possibilities for a fishery in Joehaven and working with the community of Joehaven to document knowledge of the land and the wildlife. They've built an atlas which has been turned over to the community as a community atlas. It also has information from a harvest study where hunters are actively using systems out on the land to report back directly into their own server in the community, information being collected on forms on these devices about where they've seen certain animals and what they've caught, or if they're having issues with their equipment. It's being used for hunter safety if their boat motor gets swamped and that sort of thing. And there have been a number of rescues as a result of using this system. It reports directly back to a module that's called the Who Is Out module, and it's actually rendered on a television in the Hunters and Trappers Association with the server tucked behind it. And it's been able to prompt some conversations between youth and more experienced hunters and the community about where hunters are going and what they're seeing out on the land. It also pops up a big alert if somebody's got an issue out on the land and people are able to go out and find them. And this type of information, collecting resources on the land, can also then be shown in a larger context where something like the Nunaliit Coastal Resource Inventory is pulling together these observations of species in the wild and really trying to show the pattern across Nunavut. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them, and you can always get in touch.